Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a PhD student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Pomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And bringing up the rear, I am Dr. Andrew King-Kella. I am a full-time professor of archaeology at Moorpark Community College in Southern California. And my specialties are the ancient Maya. That's what I did my dissertation on. And I do have a decent handle on local Southern California archaeology. So that's who I am. And I am happy to be here, you guys. This sounds like a lot of fun.
Very cool.
Thanks for being here with us. Dr. Kinkella is replacing our regular co-host, Ross, who is out this week. But we're happy to have you here. And I invited you for the movie we're doing today specifically because of your background. Today we're looking at the movie 2012 from 2009. Not really a Stone Age movie at all. Not even really an archaeology movie, but yeah. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about anyway.
Yeah, I think so. And so I'll give the sort of rundown of the movie itself. So as we listen to this, we kind of have a background on what this movie is actually about. I think as we talk about this, a lot of us might remember this movie kind of vaguely, again, even though it's called 2012 and it's about the sort of Maya 2012 calendar situation. It came out in 2009, right? They're going to ride that wave. And I would say in terms of its timing, it came out at the perfect opportunity to take full advantage of the 2012 hysteria, right? Good for them. And I think as we go through this movie, while it is I'm going to ruin it for everyone and just say it's a really crappy movie. There, I'm not going to roll up to it. I'm not going to take time. This movie sucks pretty bad. And I'm not saying that because I'm a PhD professor in Maya archaeology or anything like that. Actually, I was a double major in college in archaeology and film studies. So I do have a degree in film. So basically everything I say is correct. Okay. We need to get that out of the way. Everything I say. And so as we go through this, what's so funny as I watch this bad movie is I spent very little time with my archaeology hat on and way more time with my film studies hat on, because the setup, and again, we'll do a deep dive later on the actual Maya stuff, is not really that important. What I find fascinating about this movie is how it was sold, and that it actually was a blockbuster. Like it's basically a master class in how to sell a terrible movie. And unfortunately, as we go through this, it will be very cynical. Like that's how the movie industry sold this, which is on its face a terrible movie. Again, I think I looked at Rotten Tomatoes. I think it has a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is about what it should. So how does this movie go? Basically, the opening scene, and I always recommend everyone look at the opening scene of a movie. Take it seriously, right? When it fades from black, what's the first scene? The first scene in this movie is like the Earth and the sun and the solar system, right? And it's all in alignment. And that initial scene tells us, it tries to set a tone of seriousness, a tone of like, this is a galactic situation that's going to happen to us. This is something that's out of our control, right? And I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is as we go through this, it breaks its tone and you feel it. Like, you're like, wait, that would never happen. You know, because they do such a poor job of setting up their world and being true to it. So as we fade into this sort of image of the galaxy, we come down to Earth, and basically the first 10 or 15 minutes of the movie is all the sort of secret government setup where we find the not necessarily to believed young swashbuckling geology person, right, who figures out, oh my God, the Earth is gonna crack up, right? And he has some friends on the other side of the world. Their data matches, right? And it's like, oh my God, this bad thing's gonna happen. And of course, nobody believes them at first. What I find interesting about the movie at this point is they go to the kind of the top government official, and the top government official believes them like really fast. Usually in movies, it's like, no, I don't believe you. Ooh, I got to try again. Right. And there's this like conflict. After about 15 seconds of conflict, the guy's like, ooh, those numbers are true. So then you start off in the movie. It is 2009 and then it's 2010. And the idea is the government knows all this a couple years before, and they're keeping it secret. And the setup is they're making these big, what I thought, and I think the rest of the audience feels this, were spaceships that were going to take you off the Earth because the Earth was going to explode. And only billionaires could get like tickets on it. Right. So that's the sort of behind the scenes setup. The like ne'er-do-well top secret government is keeping this from the public because they know everyone's going to die. But if you're a billionaire, you can like buy a ticket. All right. So we set that up pretty fast. Then we zoom in to the single dad with the broken family. And this trope is used all the time in disaster movies, right? Because it's all about the family. You will see this again and again. Like if you watch something like War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, same deal, right? The broken family. Even this initial scene. Oh, and the dad is played by John Cusack. And I love John Cusack. The world loves John Cusack.
Not the right role.
I know, but he couldn't. I didn't think the role was that bad, but he just couldn't save it. It was too terrible.
Yeah, I just thought it needed to be someone a little bit goofier, right? Because it was such a bad, goofy movie.
No, check this out. See, that's exactly their break of tone. Because that initial image of the solar system super serious, I think John Cusack could take it, but as they ruin their own script, you're totally right. Like it should have been somebody more wacky to play the wacky stuff that was terrible for the tone they were setting. Right. So that, at least that's how I felt. So even in an initial scene where the single dad of the broken family has to come and of course pick up his kids from the new husband who's like rich and has a Porsche and all, so cliche, right? Even the kid, one of the kids' lines, like when John Cusack's like, oh, we need to try and be a family. He's like, what family?
Yeah.
Right. So now we have the setup, right? And then the dad takes them on a hiking trip. They spend the night. Whereas behind the scenes, the dad, because he's a limo driver, he gets the drop on, oh my God, there's billionaires who are buying these tickets. Like John Cusack gets to know the secret plot. And then he's like, oh my God, I have to save my broken family. So he gets in his limo and then he drives over to the house, like the new super nice house. And he's like, oh my God, we gotta go. Right. And at first they're like, I don't know. Well, everything's like breaking behind them. Then they get in the limo and then they have what I called the disaster drive of improbability, where they drive through LA and they just break their tone for the rest of the movie. And that's also, I think, my film degree is getting a little tired now. It's been a while, but I believe that's the end of Act One, where in every movie, Act One is the setup where you meet all the characters, but you don't really know what's going to happen, but you meet everyone. Like if you think of something like Star Wars, you meet all the characters, you meet Darth Vader, you meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, you meet Luke, you meet everyone. Act One ends in Star Wars when Luke is like, he sees the burning bodies of Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and he turns to Obi-Wan Kenobi and he's like, there's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi. That's how a good movie's done, right? Because Luke is telling you, he's like, the rest of the movie's gonna be about this.
Right.
Now, 2012 being a crap movie doesn't do this very well, but the disaster drive of improbability through LA is kind of like, oh, okay, now we know what the rest of the movie's going to be about. It's about running away from this like disaster and trying to deal with it. So they get in their limo. A bunch of like improbable stuff happens where you just don't believe it. This would have been such a better movie if they had taken it seriously, right? And not done stupid side jokes like when they're pulling out from the house, John Cusack knocks the dad's Porsche. And they cut to John Cusack and he goes, oh, sorry. Like, you're not going to do that when the world is collapsing. And then they drive through Hollywood, and then they're behind an old couple because guess what? Old people drive slow. Yeah, isn't that funny? They drive slow. And he's behind them and he's honking, whatever. But then he gets around them. And then if you keep watching, the old person's car slams into like the side of a concrete bunker and they're both instantly killed. Like, is that the feel-good movie of the summer? Yeah. Is that a total break of the tone where it's like you have what's supposed to be a serious thing, then you have this horrendous, stupid joke with old people driving too slow, and then they meet a fiery, horrific death right in the sort of behind the scene. It's like, what a stupid, terrible idea, right? So then you go to Act 2, which is just like all the trials, that's going to happen. So they kind of have, they had to drive a limo. Now they're in a plane, and now they have to get away from various, stuff on the ground. They got to get gas, their plane's too small. Then they need to get a bigger plane. I took some notes, as any good film studies student would do.
Ross does too. I don't.
I took a few as I go just for laughs, but, for the plane, I wrote Disaster Drive #2 with plane, and then a dash, and I wrote I'm laughing. That's a terrible moment, right? Yeah. As an audience member, I should not laugh. This is serious. This is, and I'm laughing in a bad way. Like, this is so stupid. Then you have scenes, they pull every cliche. There's a scene where like the president who has a dead wife, he's not going. He's going to stay. He's going to go down with the ship. Oh, God.
Yeah. But he's lied to get his activist daughter onto the ship without him.
So she can make it, Dad! Like every stupid. And then you have these moments like, at that point, I think they're in Las Vegas and they got to leave Las Vegas. They got to get over to China. They got to cross the Pacific Ocean. So, one of the terrible parts, little things that I hate about movies, is like when they're taking off from Las Vegas, they have to show the plane nip the top of the Eiffel Tower, Las Vegas. Like, why do you show that? It's so stupid. Like, stop it. Right. So then they move on and they're going to cross the Pacific. Right. And you see like Hawaii, and it's all molten, and they thought they were going to land on Hawaii because they need more gas. And it looks like there's no way to get there. But then in the single stupidest moment in the entire movie, and again, there's many. This is a tough call, my friends. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but because there was like a pole shift, like while they were in flight, and tectonic movements while they were in flight, that all of a sudden China got closer, so they were able to land. Oh yeah, it comes by really fast because the idea is like, oh my God, we don't have enough gas, and they see Hawaii, and Hawaii's like a molten, you can't land, and they're like, oh my God, we're not going to make it. But then since the Earth shifted, they could make it because the plane is not part of the Earth. It's just outside. Like, I guess the atmosphere, that doesn't count. You can just chill in the atmosphere while the Earth. So next time when I need to go somewhere, I'm going to jump and then let the Earth move. And then when I land, I'm going to be somewhere else. Like it's so stupid. And actually it's so stupid that they clipped it really fast. I think even in the editing room, they were like, this is so moronic. We're going to have to say this really fast. So then they land in China, which is where the secret arcs are. And then for me, I didn't realize this. Maybe the audience doesn't, but I didn't catch it, that the arcs are actually boats, right? I didn't know that until I'm like, they're boats.
Yeah, that was mine
Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson's conspiracy theorist character specifically said they were spaceships, okay. So that's supposed to be a big reveal, I think.
Good. So the big reveal did work on me. So congratulations.
Yeah, it was pretty good because it was stupid to think they're going to fly into space and somehow survive. Yeah. But that was a good reveal. That was one of the few actually interesting parts of the movie.
I agree with you 100%. I thought that was probably the high point of the entire movie. I'm like, oh, arcs, that's kind of cool. So then there's sort of the floods coming. They get in. Of course, there's a bunch of tension because they can't close the door the whole way, and they made the arcs so you can't turn on the engines unless the doors are closed. Don't put that circuit in next time. That's a terrible choice of circuitry.
Or put the doors on the top.
Oh, you could do that.
Yeah.
Whatever, dude. They had very little time. Okay, they had to keep the door on the side. So of course there's like all this like, oh my god, I can't open the door, and sort of the climax is the John Cusack swimming under there trying to unlock the door, trying to unlock the gears, and of course his kid has to come help him. I'll help you, Dad. And it all works out. They're able to float, and then like 28 days later or something, they like everything's cool. They're floating on a brand new Earth where all the tectonics and everything are all different. And I believe the last line, I wrote this down, I could be a bit wrong, but it was something to the effect of, when we're all together, that's home.
Yeah.
And it's just like the whole like, oh, the broken families back together again.
Oh.
And there, my friends, is 2012.
Oh, gosh.
The new husband conveniently died so that the family could get back together too.
I
Yes.
swear.
I noticed that
When
too. And there was like very little mourning for him, and he seemed like a good dude.
I know, that's the terrible part. The terrible part, he's like a totally nice guy and like does everything right. He's like the nice stepdad.
Yeah.
And John Cusack's like a loser who's like, like trying to get his life together. But I'm usually really terrible at seeing like what's gonna happen in a movie, even though I have a big fat film degree. I'm still like a stupid audience member. But when we met the stepdad, I'm like, okay, countdown to when this guy dies. Like because he has to.
Well, and he was so nondescript too, right? Like you can't say what he looks like.
Let's call him Brad.
Yeah.
So it's a tough, I can't believe I went on this podcast because you guys forced me to watch 2012. I have to say, I hadn't seen it. I know I didn't watch it in the movie theater, but I feel like I watched it on HBO like a year after it came out, and I kind of half watched it. You know what I mean? I was like doing other stuff and I'm watching it, but I never did a deep dive. And it's terrible. And again, I'm not here to be the egghead college professor who's like, oh, it's terrible. I don't touch that. It's so dirty. I love movies, even if they're high concept, if they work. That's like Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park works. Jurassic Park's a great movie.
Yes.
It has stuff in it that's scientifically untrue. Who cares? It's fun. 2012 sucks.
Yes, it was so boring.
Yes.
And it was almost like a satire of a disaster movie that forgot to be funny.
That is exactly right. Yeah, they didn't know. There were two tones. There's two tones, right? I always double down on tone. It's like, you either take this seriously in that world where we make real choices to save ourselves, or you do a satire and it's like 2012, the next weekend, and you go for the fun. And they did like this awful in between, which is the worst.
Yeah.
We should also mention that it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. It's an hour too long.
Yep.
Oh my God. When I saw it, I grumbled at you, Josh, when I saw the time. I was like,
and notice I took a few notes because also when I just gave the synopsis, I needed them to remember what happened, because a bad movie is really hard to remember. Like you're like, wait, what happens next? Like how many times do they have to run into a plane? Is that number 2 or number 3? Wait, are they
3 times?
Vegas? You don't know, because it's just a mishy-mashy pile of nothing.
Well, and then I get distracted like on my phone or by the animals or something. Then you realize you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be paying attention to this. This isn't just leisure watching.
Totally happened to me too. Same thing.
Yeah.
It becomes like a job.
Yes. There are quite a few movies that we've watched on this that are very much a job.
Right.
Yeah, this is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I really also just feel like John Cusack just doesn't bring the right energy for an action movie. I love him in the stuff that he does, but he's just like, he's not an action guy. He's not a fast moving, get to the plane and fly it. He's like sipping coffee at a Parisian cafe and talk about like
You're you're
The
totally
end
right.
and but yeah.
You're totally right. It is, as the movie came out, terrible casting. I was trying to throw a bone to John Cusack earlier and be like, if they took it super serious, if it was almost sort of a psychological thriller, like he could pull that. But you're right. As a Bruce Willis action hero, it's like,
No.
no,
He has to
no.
just he has to be the professor that the like nihilist professor that had always been talking about the end, and then now this is he gets to give the big lecture and he does a book tour. Like that's who he is, right?
Totally. That's totally correct.
Oh,
Funny.
God, it was so bad. And then even then, like his ex-wife, like no personality, never got to know her. The
Nope.
kids, he never really got to know. Like there was no deep dive into any of the characters. Even the
Nothing.
geologist, there wasn't that much.
Nothing. No,
He
very
didn't really
little.
have a passion or anything, right? Like,
Nope.
yeah,
Yeah, there's so many characters we're supposed to care a lot about, and they have all these like sentimental scenes where we're supposed to really care, but it's like, I don't know these people.
Yeah.
Why do I care?
yeah,
It's supremely unfortunate. It's just
Yeah.
like, I don't know. It but on the sort of movie making cynical side, okay, I looked at the numbers because I'm always really curious about this. So its budget was like $200 million, which is like a big, summer blockbuster, which is what they were going for. Okay. Like that's cool. And the selling of it, they did I remember some of that. Like they did a bunch of like pre-selling, a bunch of commercials, a bunch of like, it's coming this summer, that kind of stuff,
yeah. I remember. Yeah,
yeah,
they
which
built
is
it up huge. Yeah.
totally huge buildup, right? $200 million movie. It only made 166 million domestically, but it made over 600 international. And that's how you sell a crap movie, right? Notice how this movie works great if you're selling it to China, to like Chinese audiences, right? Huge market. It doesn't have any like heavy sex scenes or political statements. It's just like empty. It's just empty
Right.
explosions. So
Right.
worldwide, that's how they made their money back. And that's this one aspect of the cynicism of this. We will make a crap movie that our own audience thinks is crap. Again, 166 million versus 200. That's terrible. But the international audience saved them. And I think the model of this just gives us the model. I don't know how much it was done before that to this degree of like, oh, we just make an empty thing for international sales. We make money, and that's what this is.
Oh,
I know.
smart.
I read a few comments from the director Roland Emmerich, who we're going to have to talk about because we talked about Roland Emmerich when we did 10,000 BC.
Oh, right.
But
my favorite part of this so far was the like, like that's the best part that you just did. Best part of the whole podcast.
I hated that movie.
Anyway, I read some interviews where he specifically said that like they destroyed a lot of like Christian landmarks. They destroyed the Vatican and they destroyed the what's that Jesus statue, Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro.
Right.
But they specifically kept out any Muslim landmarks being destroyed. So I think you're 100% on that. They were very careful.
International market, and it just, again, I don't know. I don't know what I expect. I don't expect a summer blockbuster to be some deep think, I don't, but I just think.
I usually expect it to be entertaining though. Like I at least want to eat the popcorn and be like, your brain turns off and you just are absorbed for a couple hours.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I think Siskel and Ebert gave it a really high ranking, like 4 out of 4 stars or something. I'm like, what the hell? And it's
so he's
because
paid off.
I know it's either that or he's thinking that it is what you're saying. He's thinking that for him, it worked as just a popcorn empty movie of explosions. But I do want like a taut story in my empty explosions. I want my explosions to not be empty.
Yeah, well, and you have to care that the people don't get exploded.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like I didn't care that they survived any more than the rest of the human population that died.
Right.
right? Like there was I didn't care who got on the ship. I thought everybody that was on the ship was an asshole,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a very important point. Yeah. There's just
Yeah.
no investment in the characters.
No.
You're like, even the kids. I'm like, these
Yeah.
kids are some annoying, snotty kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dad. What family, Dad? Like,
Yeah. There's no
please
like
fall into a
redeeming
crack.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not like in Jurassic Park where you love the kids, right?
Right. It's a perfect counterpoint, something like Jurassic
Yes.
Park. Like you care, you want to know, you're
Yeah.
with them,
Yeah.
you're along for the ride. This is interesting. What's
Yeah.
going to happen next?
Yeah.
This is just like, please God, get to the end,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So, I think what they did, because sometimes you're like, how did a movie like this get greenlit? I think they just were like, you know what? We're going to make the granddaddy of disaster movies. We're going to pull them all in. Like, that's what we're going for. We're going for because we got plane disasters. We've got like shaky earth disasters. We've got boat disasters. We're doing all the disasters. Right. So, it reminded me a lot of, it's like an amalgamation of every 1970s disaster movie. Like, if you guys have ever seen like Poseidon Adventure, which I like, it's the one where a boat flips over and they've got to get out. And all of those 70s movies, they all have like big stars. They just get like this big star ensemble cast, and then they all got to like deal with it, or earthquake, airport, and even later on, like an Independence Day or something. I think they had their sights straight set on Independence Day. They're like, it's been a while since we did Independence Day. We're going to try and get their summer blockbuster cash.
And Roland Emmerich did Independence Day as well, so it makes sense to draw that comparison.
But Independence Day was great because it had characters that you liked, well developed.
Yes.
But they also, it wasn't so formulaic. And even in the way that it was somewhat formulaic with like, it wasn't a broken family, but Will Smith was his like, it was the coming together of pieces of a broken families apart, right? Like, but it was still different. It wasn't the same old, loser dad and the successful stepdad and
no, it's like Independence Day was done right. It stuck to its tone, like the choices made sense and stuff as you went through it. Sure, it's over the top, but you're going with it because the tone from the beginning was like, we're going to be a little over the top. It's going to be wild, and that's okay. And it worked, man.
So why don't we talk a little bit about archaeology on this archaeology podcast? Since neither me nor Kim are specialists in Maya archaeology, I would like to ask you, how did the Maya know that the Earth was going to end, and why were they too stupid to get the date right?
Well,
since the Earth didn't actually end in 2012.
Well, they just leave it to the Maya to get this wrong. Thanks a lot, ancient Maya. So what's funny is we can talk about other movies that have an archaeology setup of some kind, and there's actually a lot of archaeology in it. 2012 has actually very little about the Maya. But I'll give you the setup anyway. What I find interesting about 2012 is they never did the scene where it's like the geologist or the professor inside the Maya tomb reading the inscriptions, and then zoom in on the hero's face, and then he goes, "Good God, they're right." Like they never did that scene. Like you never saw a single Maya hieroglyph. Like they never went in that.
Or a librarian didn't go and check on, some ancient,
unroll the scroll. None of that. Right. So the setup, what they're pulling from, they honestly, what they pulled from, and I saw this in some of the notes is good God Almighty. They pulled from Graham Hancock's stupid fingerprints.
It always comes back to Graham Hancock these days,
and it just drives me nuts. And he stole all his stuff from Ignatius Donnelly, who's like a century before. Like, it's just the same stupid stories. So the movie 2012 really pulls from pseudo archaeology much more. They don't even touch real archaeology, but in terms of deal with the real archaeology, the whole 2012 thing is basically, in the Maya world, what you would call a Baktun ending. It's a 400-year cycle that was ending on December 21st, 2012. And it was the 12th 400-year cycle. The Maya did their calendars and their counting in base 20. So you have 1s, 20s, and 400s, and so on if you need. So, without getting into the nitty gritty of the Maya calendar, basically in the Maya calendrix, you have 3 calendars operating all at once. But the big one, there's this long count one that it's called, and it starts from a mythical start date at 3114 BC. And that is seen as day 1 on the Maya calendar for the long count. And it's just a count of the days since 3114 BC. I believe it's August 17th or something like that. It's very close. It's August something. And so it's the equivalent of today is day 1,256,459 since the beginning of time. Tomorrow is day 1,456,000, if that makes sense, right? It's just a count of the days. But they use their base 20 system to count it. So currently we are in Baktun 13. We were in Baktun 12. So 12 times 400, that was about 3,600 years ago. It all makes sense. And the change from Baktun 12 to Baktun 13, again, was December 21st, 2012. It is the exact same thing as Y2K, as changing December 31st, 1999 to January 1st, 2000. It's a change in the thousandth number, right? The 1 becomes a 2. And it's a big deal and it's fun, but it doesn't matter, if that makes sense. There's no tilt of the earth. And the Maya never, ever, not once, wrote anywhere or inscribed anywhere that Baktun 12 was for some reason the last one and we were all going to die. They didn't even talk about it. It was just like, okay, on these dates this happens and then this dates this happens. Why would we say that on January 1st, 2000 that the world's going to end? It didn't. Nothing happened. It's just a number. It's a numeric change. So the Maya have never thought that the earth was going to end. And they also knew that at the end of Baktun 12, Baktun 13 came. They knew that, it was no big deal. So they never talked about that. That's a common misconception. So the whole 2012 thing, it's just their calendar. That's it. Right. I do think one funny part, and this is for a nerdy archaeologist like me, over the years, we've been able to match our own calendar to the Maya calendar, right? And that was a big part of the deciphering of the hieroglyphics. And 85% of Mayanists thought that December 21st was the end of Baktun 12, beginning of Baktun 13. There was a small number of us who thought it was actually 2 days later, December 23rd. And it just has to do with how you mesh the 2 calendars together. And so I always thought it would have been funny if on December 21st, everyone went, phew, we made it through. There was no disaster. And then 48 hours later, I've always wanted to see that movie. 2012, 48 hours later. Right. But, that's my little laugh track bit of what's really just a very complicated, really interesting way to measure time. That's what 2012 is for the Maya. Now, of course, fraudsters like Graham Hancock just use that and just paste on all kinds of dumb stuff that was never true and then pass that off as somehow facts. It's just not. It's made up.
Yeah, it was always strange to me how anybody ever got the idea that the end of a calendar meant the end of the world, since we all use calendars. Look, we know that you just turn it over to the next page of the calendar, right?
No, but Josh, there's no more pages. What are you talking about? There's no more pages.
But people thought that the computer would, on Y2K, that the computer would get confused about the date and then the world would shut down.
Well, Y2K was a real thing, but it wasn't the end of the world. It was going to cause some computer problems if we didn't fix it. But.
Exactly.
So Y2K was even more serious than the Mayan calendar change because there was actually a thing that could have happened, but the Maya didn't even predict that their computers might have glitches at the end of that cycle.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that's where we're at today on the American discourse of the ancient Maya and of movies in general. There's there's so much here. Oh, they do throw in, so it's not just sort of the 2012 BS stuff. You'll also see that the unfortunate touch of Graham Hancock, because it's also like what is it? Polar shift. They have like a tectonic crust displacement. That's one of their like
Yes.
pseudoscience BS things. So it's beyond whatever the Maya said, and it just goes into normal, good old fashioned pseudo archaeology, right? Pole shifting, crust displacement, and alignments and
neutrinos.
Yes.
Hold on. Let's talk about how this event actually happens here. Okay, so they start off.
Yeah.
They discover that there's intense solar activity, and the neutrinos are mutating. Which that's what set the tone for me. That is the exact equivalent of in the movie Annihilation, which I talk about a lot, which is an excellent movie which I hate because of a single line where a biologist says that the DNA is refracting, and I'm like, no, I'm done with this movie. And this movie in the first 5 minutes tells me the neutrinos are mutating.
That's right.
And I'm like, nope, this is the tone for this movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, so because the Mayan calendar predicts a planetary alignment, the planetary alignment causes the sun to emit neutrinos.
Yes.
Which, before I majored in archaeology or anthropology, I was going to major in physics before I discovered I'm really bad at math. And so neutrinos famously do not interact with matter because that's why they're so hard to detect. So the neutrinos have mutated, so now they do interact, and they're heating up the core of the Earth. And heating up the core of the Earth is going to lead to a lot of tectonic activity. And these feel like completely unrelated things. Why did the Mayan calendar actually predict the planetary alignment, or does that have nothing to do with it?
You know, I'm going to shock us all. It has nothing to do with it.
So the Mayan calendar predicts a planetary alignment, which doesn't make sense. The planetary alignment causes the sun to emit neutrinos, which doesn't make sense. The neutrinos mutate and heat up the Earth, which doesn't make sense. And then the heating up of the Earth causes crustal displacement, which is a discredited pre-continental drift theory.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Didn't they explain it like if it's an orange and the center of the orange gets really hot?
But
that's how they
the center of the
explained it,
Earth
right?
is already
and
really
who
hot.
wants a hot orange? Nobody wants a hot orange, dude.
Okay. So here's something else we can talk about, because when they're talking about this crustal displacement theory, the guy who came up with this was named Charles Hapgood, and they talk about this guy a lot, and he's actually a real guy. And just oddly enough, recently we renovated our lab at the University of Winnipeg, and we were going through all these old books and throwing some out, and we were going to throw out this book, and I'm like, let me keep that book. And so this book is Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings by Charles H. Hapgood.
Nice.
And Dr. Kinkella, I feel like maybe you know a little bit about this guy, because I know that you did an episode of your pseudo-archaeology podcast recently about the Piri Reis map.
Oh, you know what? I don't. So I'm a fraud just like everyone else. No, I did that. So I didn't have to look them up because the Piri Reis. What? You know, I come here for a little joy on a Friday morning, and you get to bring up the Piri Reis map. So I don't know Charles Hapgood personally, except for the name. I just know the name. The name goes with map stuff. You know, I actually didn't need him because, Graham Hancock and others just co-opt all that crap.
Right.
I know of what he wrote based on what Graham Hancock says. So, I didn't have to do the deep dive. Oh, and before we talk about that, I did want to give, 2012 a little bit of a bone on the planetary alignments. The Maya never talked about planetary alignments, but they did talk about the cycles of Venus a lot. So if anybody's confused about that, the Maya did talk about the movement of Venus, where Venus is. Venus as morning star versus evening star. So they were into the movements of Venus very much, but not, alignment of the solar ecliptic or something. It's not like that. So I just wanted to, before we forgot, I'm like, before we moved on, I was like, oh wait, there is a little bit that the Maya care
somewhere
about.
somebody is disappointingly packing up their crystal collection.
Totally are. But anyway, what about the maps thing? Any more about them?
Well, okay, so I haven't read this book or anything else by him either, of course.
You are just ignorant.
That's true.
You don't know.
I know what I need to know about the Piri Reis map from your podcast episode, so I don't need to read any books. Anyway, the premise of this book, The Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, is he starts from the Piri Reis map, and he's basically building this hypothesis about an ancient civilization 10,000 years ago that was somehow destroyed, but they had advanced technology, and they had mapped out the coast of Antarctica before there was ice on it. So that's the whole conspiracy about the Piri Reis map, is that it's supposed to show the coast of Antarctica. But, of course, it doesn't actually. It's just kind of a bad map because we hadn't explored that much of the world at that point, right?
And if you look at maps at the time, and again, this is something that drives me nuts. When people like Graham Hancock just pull their BS stuff straight out of their ass, like I have to take the time and actually look into all the sources and stuff. And it's always such a bummer because sometimes I even hold out a bit of a hope, like maybe there was something to this at some point, or maybe it is an easy mistake. It's like, no. This is a total charlatan shyster fraud, right? Because if you look at like the Piri Reis map, and you take the time, it's obviously the coast of South America curving around the bottom of the map because they ran out of space on the paper, and they do that a lot in that time, right? This is 15, 19. So it's to anyone, obviously the coast of South America, but just because they curved it and it's located at the bottom, they're like, oh, it's Antarctica. And it's so stupid, right? It's it's totally dishonest. That's the other thing I hate. I don't mind if somebody's just ignorant and doesn't know better. That's understandable. We're all ignorant on things until we learn them. But to be overtly dishonest, that the whole Piri Reis thing is just stupid, right?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with reality.
So the whole thing about Charles Hapgood is I don't think that he was deceitful. I think he really believed the stuff he was saying, except that the problem is he's like a professor of history, and he's branching out into geology and archaeology and stuff like this, and kind of got lost with it. Yeah. But the way this Piri Reis map in this book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, ties into 2012 and tectonics is that before this book, he wrote another book about where he's the guy who came up with crustal displacement theory, or it popularized it. And so crustal displacement theory, so in 1950, when he was writing about this stuff, we didn't know about plate tectonics, or was a new idea that wasn't well accepted. Yeah. That's one of the crazy things to me is how recent plate tectonics is, because it's so intuitive and obvious to everybody born in the last 50 years. But it wasn't until the 70s that we got a real grasp of plate tectonics. So it was an idea in the 50s, but it was most geologists didn't accept it was true. And so crustal displacement theory is similar to plate tectonics in the sense that crustal displacement is the shifting of the crust around a molten core of the Earth. Yeah. So it's very similar, and it's kind of hard to just explain the difference. And basically his idea was that there was some cycle where every in the movie they say 640,000 years. I don't know if that's what he said, but somehow the core of the Earth heats up, and then the crust floats around on top of it and dramatically shifts. And then this is associated with pole shifts. Yeah. Not the magnetic pole, but the actual rotational pole of the Earth. And so, I mean, there's hints of truth in this, because the pole of the Earth has oscillated, a small number of degrees throughout the ancient past. And if you change, if you heat up the Earth and change its proportions, it's going to wobble and it's going to shift a little bit. Yeah. But the things he's proposing that it's, shifting in the movie, the South Pole shifts to Wisconsin in 24 hours, right?
And again, if you're in a plane while it's happening, you're fine, dude. Get in the plane.
But the other thing that was happening is, of course, the actual crust was shifting as well. Right. So when when China was 1,000 kilometers closer than they expected, my interpretation was that the continent itself had shifted 1,000 kilometers overnight. Okay, which Mr. also is Science. Ridiculous.
All right, Mr. Sciencey Science, who knows things.
Whatever way, it doesn't make any sense.
The fools like me thought that you had to be in a plane and the Earth shifted, but obviously the tectonic. So the idea being the Pacific Ocean got smaller. Maybe you're right. See, that would actually makes more sense in
slightly
Crazy World. Yeah, So yeah, I rescind my my plane joke because of new data.
Anyway, so tying all this together, the Piri-Reis map and crustal displacement, his idea is that, once again, going back to Atlantis, where it always goes back to Atlantis.
Time. Can we get a little more like creative? Good God.
And we talked about the Disney movie Atlantis a few weeks ago with Frederick Trusoham from the Digging Up Ancient Aliens podcast. I heard you were on his podcast a while ago.
He was great.
Charles Hapgood is trying to find a way to demonstrate that Atlantis exists, and he says Atlantis does exist. They were advanced and they mapped out the entire Earth, including the shore of Antarctica before there was ice on it, and then pole shift and crustal displacement happens and Atlantis sinks under the ocean. And so he's using this to explain all of that. And so this is how we tie this all together. But it's interesting, the movie talks about Charles Hapgood so much because he was a real guy, except that they suggested this crustal displacement theory of his is real and happening. And of course it's not, because we've since replaced that with plate tectonics, which of course makes a lot more sense. But you can't shift a continent 1,000 kilometers overnight because of mutated neutrinos from the sun.
You know, I'm tired of listening to you talk because you're just a shill for big science. It's so obvious, dude. Like, somebody like Charles Hapgood is trying to give us the real truth, but we have to listen to people just trying to keep your job in academia.
Yeah.
They're all the same.
Your high paying, fancy, prestigious, stable job.
Sometimes they call me like on, I get really angry people reacting to my podcast or my YouTube channel, especially because I made fun of Graham Hancock, and they always call me things like, "You so-called professor." I'm like, so-called? I do have an office and I do get a check every year.
It's actually
from
just
the college.
called.
Yeah. So-called. I'm like,
It's so called.
I'm a real one. Oh, man.
All right, one more thing we need to talk about is Roland Emmerich.
Okay.
So Roland Emmerich, we talked about him when we covered 10,000 BC, which came out, I think, the year before this movie. So these were one after another.
Right.
But Roland Emmerich, it seems, really loves his conspiracy theories because he created the entire Stargate franchise. He did 10,000 BC. He did 2012. He did a movie I'd never heard of called Anonymous because apparently he's an anti-Stratfordian. Do you guys know what that means?
No.
There is a conspiracy theory that William Shakespeare didn't write William Shakespeare's plays.
Oh, yes.
There you go.
And so there's a movie about that called Anonymous by Roland Emmerich, where he posits that William Shakespeare didn't write William Shakespeare.
See, William Shakespeare is just a shill for big literature. Okay.
And more recently, he did Moonfall, which is based on the conspiracy theory that the moon is a hollow construction that was made by aliens, which I also haven't seen. But he loves his conspiracy theories. So I have a few. I read a few interviews and I have a few quotes from him because I'm not really sure where to fall. I know that he's an anti-Stratfordian because there is an interview where
I want to be that just for the name.
Yeah. Well, the one of the opposing views is the Oxfordian view, so I think he's an Oxfordian. I don't have a dog in the fight of whether Shakespeare was real or not because I just don't really care. So it's hard for me to really get invested in that. But I've listened to a few podcast episodes about that because I do love my conspiracy theories as well.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like there's any really good evidence to suggest that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare, but I guess it's a fun idea.
One of the only jokes that actually made me kind of giggle, well, it was more of a huh, but was when the crazy guy, I guess he wasn't crazy, he was right, but the wild guy, then John Cusack was like, where's the map? He's like, it's in the map section of the conspiracy shelf.
That's true. There was a little moment of levity there, yeah. And if I was Woody Harrelson playing that part, I mean, he must have had so much fun playing the part. Like,
he was probably the only one that actually it suited. He did well in that part, and
it's great. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, in an interview with GQ, they asked Roland Emmerich, You've stated that you don't think Shakespeare wrote the plays, and he said, I'm 100% sure. So it seems like he's fully in on the anti-Stratfordian conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to the archaeology conspiracies, I'm not really sure where he falls on that.
There was a quote by him. I glanced at it really fast about the Graham Hancock stuff and the Fingerprints of the Gods book, and he said something like, I've just been really wanting to do a movie about Fingerprints of the Gods for so long, you know. And the point where he says I'm 100% sure, that just shows you, you know, the whole pseudo-archaeology thing, it's like a religious movement. You cannot argue people out of it with facts. They are not going to listen, you know. So I always do my same thing where I'm like, I'll tell you the story once. I'll give you the facts one time in a kind manner. I'm not going to make you feel bad, right? I'm just be like, hey, no, actually, in reality, it's like this and this and this, you know, because I want to explain the truth. That's my job as a professor and an archaeologist, right? But 95% of the time, they do not care. No. They get angry and they just double down on the foolishness. And Roland Emmerich's just doing that.
It's the same with creationism. Like you can't stop willful ignorance, right? We can teach and educate, but you can't. Someone who wants to think that.
Creationism is exactly the same. It's like every argument I learned for this, I learned in creationism. You know, it's just the same, just blind, you know, and they just won't go with it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, in Roland Emmerich's movies, an interesting thing is that he seems to have a reverence for science, and scientists are typically the heroes in his movies. So that was true in this one, where you have the physicists who actually discover the problem and go to the government, and it's actually the government that are the bad guys.
Yeah.
But the scientists are the good guys, right?
It's true. It's an interesting... It is, but it's not, but it is. But it's like the scientists, but also working with the total whack jobs like Woody Harrelson. It's like the
whack jobs are always vindicated as well. Right. Even in going back to Independence Day, where what's the guy's name? Randy Quaid? Is that the actor? He is like a UFO conspiracy theorist who thinks he's been abducted, and everybody thinks he's crazy. But then in the end, he's the hero that takes down the spaceship.
So underneath it all, it's scientists who will go with pseudo-archaeology are the heroes. You know, the ones who listen to the foolishness.
Yes.
So in another interview, Roland Emmerich said he's talking about scientific feedback and actually talking to scientists when he's writing his movies. This was in reference to Moonfall, and he says it's super important because when you don't do that, the movie falls apart because you can't have all the answers. Scientists have all the answers, and you really have to listen to them too. So it seems like he really is interested in putting real science in his movies, and yet somehow he writes about crustal displacement and mutating neutrinos.
It depends on what he classifies as a scientist, I guess, right?
Well, in the case of Moonfall, apparently he was talking with scientists from NASA, and he actually made changes based on their recommendations. And again, I haven't seen that movie, but it's about the moon being a space station that crashes into the Earth, so I don't really know.
Yeah, but see, he's just using the science as icing on his pseudoscience cake.
They're like, he's like, there's two O's? Oh, okay. So yeah, I took their advice.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's not, he's not really listening to the scientists. He's trying to get the sheen of the movie right. You know, like, oh, you actually use this kind of computer? Oh, okay. Oh, a lab actually looks like this? Oh, okay. But the overarching idea is just pure, like, fiction, you know? Yeah. So it's that doesn't excite me too much. He's like, the scientists know. Well, yeah, they do when you need them to.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so there's one more quote from an interview with discussingfilm.net that I wanted to mention here. They asked him, are there any big conspiracy theories that you fully believe in or that you've come up with on your own? And he says, I think I'll leave them now, the conspiracy theories. Moonfall is maybe my last movie ever that is a conspiracy theory. It got super dangerous. All of a sudden, people believe in the flat earth theory. They believe in QAnon, where they say the Democrats live off the blood of babies. I mean, how crazy can it be? All that is to say, I'm out of the conspiracy business because that's just not very cool anymore. So this is what makes me wonder about where he actually sits on the conspiracy stuff.
So it's not fun anymore.
Well, it's not fun, but it's like danger. Like, we're all recognizing how dangerous conspiracy theories can be, especially since all the QAnon stuff, right? Like, I teach a course on archaeology and popular culture. And it starts off just like talking about movies and having a lot of fun. And then at the end, it gets to like racism and white supremacy and Democrats drinking the blood of babies. And now suddenly it's really dark and like important for archaeologists to have this education to know what the public actually thinks about the work we do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, a lot of this to me too is just the national sickness of loneliness. You know, so many people are just alone. They're just like we are right now. They're like just on their computers. They're just looking up weird stuff. They're just going down weird rabbit holes, and they
looking
don't
for
have
a community and an identity.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, they have no family that, you know, they don't have what makes us human. You know, human beings are social creatures. So they have this fake, like online stuff that makes them feel like a member of something. And they're like, you can be ignorant and come be a part of us. You don't have to do anything. You just need to like do what we say. And that's why it's so cultish and pseudo religious ish, you know, because you have to believe what they tell you, you know, and then us here, we're like outsiders attacking them. They always talk about how they feel attacked, you know?
Yeah. But that's how you make an in-group, is by having an out-group and a common enemy, right?
Yep. That's why, for Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse, that's why the first 5 minutes is about how archaeologists attack him and archaeologists are terrible people. It has to be that way, right? The first 5 minutes have to be that to set up the dichotomy, to set up the battle, because you're right. You can't have an in-group without the hatred of big archaeology, right?
Yep.
So what do we as archaeologists do about that? Because I haven't watched the whole series because I just can't. Like, I would love to do that for our podcast, but like I don't have the emotional energy to tackle that.
Come on.
But I watched the first episode. Well, it's so hard.
Do it.
I watched the first episode, and you're right. That first 5 minutes is like, how can I ever say anything about this? You know, because no matter what I say, it's set up that either, of course, I'm going to say that he told everybody that I'm going to be lying, so no matter what I say, it's set up that I'm lying. How do we actually do anything about that?
And an attack, yeah.
Right. No, that's the genius of somebody who's a really good charlatan and fraud. Like, they know, Graham Hancock knows he has to set it up like that. Has to, right? Or he's just open for attack. He has to make his just dreamtime foolish BS have some sort of legs to stand on, and it's because he's the outsider battling, just like all these characters in the movies. He's them, you know. He has the truth that's being held down, right? That's his. Got to do it. So in terms of what do we as archaeologists do, you know, like I said earlier, I always give everyone the one shot where I'm just like, I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to be cool. I'm going to be your friend. I'm not going to make you feel bad, you know. But in a larger world, like, archaeologists are pretty crappy at reaching out to the general public. And when an archaeologist reaches out to the general public, like we're doing right now, or some others do, that the rest of archaeology doesn't then attack them for something that is slightly off, or, oh, you went on that show? I can't believe it. You know, so I really fault modern archaeology to the really sort of conservative academic wing of archaeology, which is a lot of it, because it's such an easy attack on other professionals trying to talk to the general public. You know, if they go on a show on Discovery Channel or Science Channel or whatever, like, I've done that stuff, and I've felt the cold shoulder of sort of big academia. And I find that really unfortunate. I think young people in archaeology are really scared off, like grad students and stuff can be really scared off of doing stuff like this, like podcasts like this and stuff, because they can see that their older professors are like, you just need to write another article for American Antiquity. You can't do that, you know, outreach. It's like, and the way they define outreach too, sometimes it's like, oh, you just blow the dust off your dissertation and then like write it again and then go, oh, that's public outreach. No, nobody cares. You need to do real public outreach. And so I give big points to people like us who are doing this, and the small group of other archaeologists who really interact with the public. They don't say they do, they really do, because it does come with professional scary bits and pieces, you know, and it just shouldn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, can you guys think of anything, you know, in terms of what we should do in terms of,
I always just say like education, young, outreach,
Mhm.
get them at kids. Even just teaching kids critical thinking skills,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
how to interpret news. I mean, even now, even beyond archaeology, fake news and all that stuff is so big.
Yeah. How about a kids archaeology show that's animated? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Something just and fun and
Yes.
and relaxed, not
Yeah.
like, oh, we're here to teach you some stuff. Here's the Paleozoic and the Mesozoic. Like, no, just, let's
Something fun. Yeah, like
fun.
horrible histories, but with
Right.
archaeology.
Right.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
a little fun.
Yeah.
Remember fun? Yeah.
Speaking of animated archaeology shows, have you heard about the new show from Andy Samberg called Digman?
No.
No.
The trailer just came out this week, and I saw it. It looks interesting. It's not supposed to be educational. It's sort of like an Indiana Jones kind of thing.
Right.
But Andy Samberg plays this Indiana Jones type called, I think his name is Rip Digman.
But even though that's just for fun, that could be great because it has
Yeah.
like a positive feeling to it. And I don't care
Yeah.
if on that show they go to Atlantis or something,
No, it's yeah.
when I was a kid, I was super into In Search Of, which was on reruns, which is like the old Leonard Nimoy show where he like hosted, and a lot of that stuff was pseudoscience, but I was into it. And then,
Yeah.
but I knew enough to know that some of it was fake. And as I got older, I'm like, I'm really curious about the reality of it. So I don't even have problems with even something so out there as like Ancient Aliens. As long as it gets people in,
I mind
we
it when it's sold as real. I don't like that.
that's the hard part, right? That's the part
Yes.
where it's a bridge too far, where it's like, no, this is real history. No, it's not.
Yeah, like when
You
it's on
know,
Discovery Channel instead of a legitimate documentary.
History Channel.
The History Channel, yes.
It's terrible, right? So that aspect of it is awful, right? As soon as it's sold as like, no, this really happened.
Yeah.
That's when it loses me.
Yeah. When it's just entertainment, it's great. I love
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Yeah.
So here's something I discovered this morning doing a little bit of last minute research for this episode. Roland Emmerich has a new movie in production. Have either of you heard of this one?
Mm-mm.
It's called Maya Lord, based on a novel by the same name. It tells the true story of Gonzalo Guerrero, a Spanish sailor who was enslaved by the local Maya when he shipwrecked on the Yucatan Peninsula in 1511. Guerrero earned his freedom, became a respected warrior, and married the daughter of a Mayan chief. Basically, he's captured by the Maya, but then joins the Maya and fights against the Spanish with them. It says it's a true story. I have
Right.
no idea.
Even me, the much vaulted PhD Maya archaeologist, hasn't heard this one. I've heard of it. I've heard of stuff like this, and I think quote unquote true story. How much do they really know? How much, because you do have examples like that in that time frame, in the New World in general, of people shipwrecking and then, having to live with whoever is there, when they shipwrecked and kind of what happens. But I mean, my seat of the pants guess is they would have to fill in just piles of it. And of course, if it's just a movie for general release, they're going to have to add all kinds of stuff that will have nothing to do with reality, but whatever.
yeah.
Well, if we're still recording this podcast when that movie comes out, maybe we'll invite you back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that'd be great. And I was going to say, I have to see it because everyone will ask me about it. Like,
Yes,
like
you
you
have to.
guys, any of these Maya ones that ever come out, I'm like, well, there's another $15 I got to burn to watch that.
Oh. Okay, my one comment on the movie
Yeah.
is that like it's ridiculous and they're assholes that it's only the rich, powerful people that get to go on the ships, right? And the idea
Yes.
is that they're going to save humanity, but that's so ridiculous because most of the people on there were old, right? Most of the
Yes.
rich, powerful people are going to be old. Their eggs are
That's right.
gone, their sperm is depleted and
That's right.
slow moving, and it just really is not a good plan on how to start humanity. So if they had really actually cared about starting humanity again or saving the species, they would have had like healthy young people of different ages and like
No, you just find young rich people Think about how many YouTube sensations there are. How many
Yeah, all the
influencers. Those guys,
influencers just on those
they're on.
boats.
Here's another thing about the end of this movie. It's just kind of taken for granted all the way through that the entire Earth is going to be destroyed and everyone's going to be dead.
Yep.
But then they end up on the arcs, and then they're looking at the data, and they're like, "Oh, turns out Africa is
It's
fine."
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, we're going to head over there," and I'm like, "Oh, great! So now we've got colonialism 2.0, where all of the worst rich Westerners
Yeah,
are arriving
that's what I
in
thought
boats in
too.
Africa."
Yeah.
But everyone's dead on Africa. So
Are they dead?
Are they?
I'm pretty sure, because the idea, like, well, now we're doing a deep dive into the science of 2012, because I think they said, and you had to catch this. This came by super fast. So because of all the tectonic shifting and all that kind of stuff, that the point on South Africa is now the tallest spot on Earth. Like, it's no longer Mount Everest; it's South Africa.
Yeah.
So in all that tectonic shifting and stuff, and all the flooding and stuff, I think everyone's dead. So it's just a new place to get on. But I don't know. I don't know if they said something about we made contact with somebody. I forget.
I don't know if they
No,
made
they
contact,
didn't.
but they did
just
say
said that,
that.
let's head there.
Yeah,
They did say that Southern Africa probably never even flooded, is
That's
what they
right.
said.
that's
Yeah.
right. So yes, maybe there's some.
But are they
stragglers
going to have
left.
to just also who's going to clean up all the dead bodies and everything?
Don't ruin my 2012 experience, okay?
Sorry.
yeah, dude. I was totally into it until now.
Ugh.
Oh,
But it just reminded me of that this book I read called the Sperm Bank or something, the Nobel Bank, and it's this idea that
Right.
this guy had to start a sperm bank with only sperm from Nobel Prize winners, and only women with Mensa could go and get the
you go.
sperm. And he had
Right.
this whole idea that he was going to make these genius babies. And then he found that everybody that had a Nobel Prize, their sperm wasn't really working anymore because they were all 70 or 80 at that
Yep.
point. Then he had to loosen the parameters, and then he ended up getting some sperm, but it got all kind of shady of, they had to take an IQ test and everything. And
Yes.
then it happened for a while. Women with Mensa or whatever went and got babies' sperm. And then this journalist went and tried to find, where the babies that had them, are they doing really well? And they're all really impressive people, musicians and scientists and all this. Then he tried to track down the fathers, and what he found is that majority of the babies were just from this one dude who was just a regular dude living in a double wide in Florida with a lot of kids that he even knew about, right, from different mothers, and just he just really just was very evolutionarily fit, reproductively fit. And but what it was that they think the reason why the kids were so impressive is that because the moms assumed that they were these special kids,
Right.
that they were given all the advantages and all the nourishment and all the everything,
Of
right?
course.
So
Yeah. I might have seen something about that. Did that guy have red hair? It was the one guy, because I remember seeing something
I
about
don't
that,
know.
where there was this one guy who
I read a book. I
was-
didn't watch it. So but
Yeah, no, it's just
it was funny.
that's great. It's
Yeah, it was
yeah,
a good
the
book.
nurturing effect on does have a little bit to do there. It's not just
Yeah.
nature. So
No.
shockingly.
Well, and mom and dad could still be smart, but he's not
Right.
he doesn't get Nobel Prize. He's just a regular dude living his life, right?
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
made money selling his sperm to
Yes,
one
exactly.
sperm bank.
Ah,
So good. That's
yeah.
what it reminded me of. It's they're going to get there, and they're
Yeah, I
going
know.
to have trouble.
Not the best plan for
No.
Earth repopulation,
No.
except for the influencers.
Yes.
Influencers, dude. See, as always, the influencers are the key to the future. There you go.
There you go.
I hope we've all
That's
learned that.
The quote of the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we can probably wrap up 2012.
I think
We
so.
normally give our recommendation at the end. I don't think there's any question here. 2012 is not a very good movie. It's pretty
No.
long. It's not really much story to it. It's just running away from huge disasters that keep getting bigger.
Yep.
Yep.
I would totally agree. It's really bad. I would backwardsly recommend it to film students or students of screenplays and stuff in general, on exactly how not to make a movie. And I mean that in seriousness, how not to write a movie, because you
Yeah.
can actually get tips on, oh, this is what we shouldn't do. But if
Yeah.
you're going, even if you're like, nah, I'll just watch it. It's, just for some explosions and stuff. You can do better. All those other
Yeah.
movies were already
Just watch
listed.
Independence Day again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Independence Day's 20 times better. So yeah,
Yeah.
you can go to your deathbed having never watched this and it's okay.
Yes.
There are some pretty cool destruction scenes, though.
Not worth
watching the
it.
planes fly
No.
through stuff. The Yosemite or Yellowstone
Yeah, the Yellowstone
volcano. That was pretty cool looking.
But I disagree because each one of those is ruined by like a stupid joke, like when the plane has to nick the Eiffel Tower, or when you have to look back and the old people are they drive so slow. Like they throw
Maybe
in
we
a
can do our own cut of 2012 where we take out all the jokes and get it down to a tight hour
Yeah.
and 20 minutes.
2012, the essence.
Oh, you know what we forgot to do? Plug your all your information at the end of the episode. Where can people reach you? I mean, I'm sure you have way more listeners across your platform than we do, but in case
Dude,
somebody's
I
listening who
probably
doesn't already,
do. Speaking of influencers, I think I'm on the arc, man.
I subscribe to 2 or 3 different things that you do. So,
Oh, that's so kind. So, where you can reach me is I have my YouTube channel called Kinkella Teaches Archaeology. And then I'm a part of 2 podcasts. One is the CRM Archaeology podcast, and that's much more for sort of serious working kind of archaeologists. But the other one is the Pseudo Archaeology podcast, and they come out every other week. I believe the Pseudo Archaeology podcast comes out every other Wednesday. So you can reach me there. You can always leave comments on any of those. I do read them, and I do try and write back as best I can, which is most of the time.
We've gotten 2 emails too,
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
I don't send you everything we get. We've got some comments on YouTube. A lot of them are sort of like PR people trying to like sell us on how to get more followers.
We know how to. We have to tell people about it. We just don't do it.
We're so bad at it. But I'm going to know that we've really made it once we start getting that conspiracy pushback,
Yes.
because we get a lot of good comments. I want to start getting some angry comments. That's how I'm going to know when we've really made it.
I'm telling you, man, you do, but you don't. Like I used to get, I would say like 98% positive, for years. I've been doing my YouTube channel for about 4.5 years and the podcast stuff for maybe 1.5 years or something. And they were overwhelmingly positive until I made fun of Graham Hancock. And what I will say is my YouTube video where I made fun of Graham Hancock, it got like 20,000 views really fast, which is a lot for me. And I got over 1,000 comments, and I would say like 95% of them were negative. And while it's funny, when you get like 1,000 people who hate you, it does weigh on you in a weird way. Like you just keep clicking on it and you just keep seeing like, oh, you so-called professor, oh, the Sphinx erosion hypothesis, deal with that, just stupid, ignorant stuff from angry people.
I've gone viral on white supremacist Twitter.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Twitter is
Twitter is the asshole of the world. Don't
like
go
I don't
on
want
Twitter.
them to like my research, but it's still
I
keep getting notifications. You're like,
I can't stand Twitter. I have a profile that I almost never put anything on because I just do think Twitter is absolutely unhealthy for all humans. Like it's it's terrible. So the other ones I don't mind so much, but Twitter's so terrible that's even where like other professionals in archaeology or what have you will eat their own. Like you'll get Twitter mobs against you. It's terrible. So anyway, that's my little like 2 cents on that. Like, don't look for me on Twitter. But any of those other sources are great.
Well, thank you for joining us here. If that Maya Lord movie comes out and we're still making this episode, I'm definitely going to send you another email.
Oh my God,
Yes.
dude, give me a call. It's so funny. That was really fun, you guys. Again, thanks for thinking of me. Thanks for reaching out like this.
well, thanks for coming. It was good.
Of course.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.